Hey, it's Rebecca Reed from Line Upon Line Learning, but today I'm putting on my Rebecca Reed's hat to talk a little bit about books. Tomorrow, early in the morning, they're going to announce the ALA Youth Media Awards, which I'm excited about hearing, especially the Newbery, because that's what I've been reading through this year. Some of the suggested middle grade novels, the excellent ones that came out in 2023. So I want to share some of my thoughts on about half of the books on the School Library Journal 2024 Mock Newbery list. And the other ones I haven't read yet. So here are the ones I have not yet read. An American Story by Kwame Alexander. It's a picture book, so it wasn't really on my radar. And then I started seeing people mention it for the Newbery too. I'll have to find it. El Case looked like I don't know much about it. Ebb and Flow is a graphic novel. The Eyes and the Impossible by Dave Eggers. Gone Wolf by McBride. It seemed like a more mature book, so maybe it's more like Prince level. I don't know. The Mexikid, a graphic novel I did want to read, but it disappeared into my kids' room, and then I ended up not being able to read it, and then it was due at the library. I don't think she finished it yet once school started, but I did intend to read it. My Head Has a Bellyache, which is a volume of poetry. The Skull by John Klassen. Again, it's a picture book, but apparently it's a longer picture book, like maybe 60 pages or something, and it sounds like older kids appreciate it. And then there are a bunch of books I didn't review on my blog. Well, a book from that list I didn't review on my blog, A Walk in the Woods by Nikki Grimes. It was originally illustrated by Jerry Pinkney, and he died, and his son Brian Pinkney finished off his sketches. So I'm not impressed by this. I wasn't impressed with the sketches. And the poem was okay. So I think I would have to revisit it if this does get some kind of recognition tomorrow, just to see what I really thought. It didn't stand out to me on my one read from the library. Okay, so now the books that I did read this year. First, I want to mention A First Time for Everything by Dan Santat. This is his graphic novel memoir from when he went to Europe with a youth group in 1989, and when he went on a youth trip in 1989 to Europe. And I really liked the look at the freedoms you can have when you're in Europe as a 13-year-old back then. The story really, it focuses a lot, of course, as it's called, The First Time for Everything. It focuses on his new experiences. And I felt like the graphic novel did an amazing job of zeroing in on those emotions through the images and the pictures. Zooming in on a face, on the blush on the cheeks, the shoulders, all these different things. It was a book about emotions. Before he went on this trip, he had the most embarrassing moment of his life. Those pink cheeks. And then he goes on this trip, and you can just see the confidence building as you look at these illustrations. For that reason, with the illustrations being such an integral part of the story, to me, that doesn't make it as Newbery worthy as others on the list that emphasize the text a little more. Anyway, I really enjoyed the perspective that he gave, and his illustrations were great. And I would suggest it for over 12s because he's in Europe as a 13-year-old, and he does try a puff on a cigarette, and he does have a drink of alcohol. And although he didn't like either of those, they still are mentioned in the book. So probably a little older kids. But it is a fun story about him finding a way to be comfortable in his own skin as he has this amazing chance to grow up over one summer having adventures in a way that we can't do anymore nowadays. The next book on the list that I have read is Chinese Menu, the history, myths, and legends behind your favorite foods. And from the minute I saw this, and I opened it and started looking through it, and when I heard about it, everything reminded me of D'Aulaires' Book of Greek Myths, which I loved. It's this big oversized book, D'Aulaires' book is, and it just page after page of Greek myths with the big illustrations on each page. One of the things that always bothered me is it just myth after myth after myth. There's no table of contents. There's no direct order. It just kind of all flows together. Chinese Menu has a different feel to it, although it's the same kind of concept. In this one, the myths are those behind, instead of just explaining the world through Greek mythology, these are explaining how different foods came to be from the Chinese menu. So it looks at all different kinds of Chinese food. But she doesn't just give them one after the other. They're separated into categories: teas, appetizers, desserts, special types of dishes and things like that. And Grace Lynn, beginning of each story, each legend, she gives a little bit of information about the type of food, where the myths were originally told in China, how they developed and came to the United States, or how they were originally created in the United States to explain different food or food traditions. She even gives her own little experiences of when she first ate it, or if she didn't even get a chance to eat it, or whatnot. I really like that it's the way it's set up with that little touch of explanation, but also the stories just make all the Chinese food sound great. And I didn't have Chinese food growing up unless you count like soy sauce with steamed veggies. So it made me really hungry to try some new things. And it's definitely a great book for foodies or anybody who enjoys fairy tales or myths. And it's also a visual delight with the illustrations throughout it. It's oversized, just like the Dahler's book of Greek myths was oversized, but it feels really strong and sturdy, and it's just wonderful to hold as well as to read. Newbery, I don't know. Although it's a collection of myths, I feel like I don't know if it's Newbery book in terms of the literary quality, but it is certainly a great book. Highly recommend. I read that one back in November and wrote about it. Another book, The Labors of Hercules Beale. I just read this month, and I know the Newbery Committee is not allowed to take other books by the author, or other past Newbery wins into consideration. But for me, it was really hard to read The Labors of Hercules Beale without thinking about Schmidt's other books about seventh graders who have a teacher that changed their life, because that's what this one was about. I still prefer the Wednesday Wars, in which the teacher helps the main character, in that case, Holling Hood, come to understand their lives and humanity in general through Shakespeare. In this one, the teacher is former Marine, who's a lot more strict. They're also doing a unit on Greek mythology. And so in this one, our fictional Hercules Beale has to take on the labors of the mythological Hercules in his own life, find ways to explain his trials and struggles through Hercules' 12 labors that he had to perform. To me, this was a stretch. I loved the setting. I loved Hercules Beale himself. His brother was named Achilles, and they have a number of other supporting characters in the community, including the teacher, who they all come together as a community to help the Beales brothers. Once again, Hercules is a kid with his own struggles and trials. In this case, his parents have died in a car crash, and his older brother has come back from his National Geographic article, whatever, photography life to come back and take care of Hercules and their family business. But there's just a little bit of suspension of disbelief that's required in reading this book as an adult that didn't do it for me. The writing's okay. I like that every time Hercules had something in his life that could be explained as a trial of the mythological Hercules, he wrote a response to his teacher, who then responded back. I think that was the highlight of the book, is the teacher's responses. Now, I listened to the book, and so it was a little different experience in that way. The narrator is a little overly dramatic in some places, but also I think the book, you have to be a little overly dramatic because you have to suspend disbelief a little bit. It's in first person from Hercules Beale's perspective. But again, there's no way that his older brother would leave him, a 12-year-old kid, in charge of the farm and greenhouse, the store, essentially, while he goes out of town for a few days. That just doesn't happen in books. Parents know this. There's no way you can explain this away as a school assignment about Hercules. On the other hand, some people thought the teacher expected him to do too much to be able to go through this amazing experiences and then write it up. And I don't think so. I think teachers can be a little bit harder on kids, and they could do a lot more. I feel like schools, I have a lot of opinions about schools in general, but expect more of our kids. But in general, there was just something about the whole book that, as wonderful as he was, and what a wonderful concept it is that he could replicate Hercules in his own life. He could tie this in with the lightning thief or any other unit on Greek mythology. And it was nice that the teachers could help him with his healing, and the whole community came together. It just fell flat as a powerful book for me. Not something that's going to stand out as rising to the top against some of these other books. So that's the Labors of Hercules Veal. I think it would definitely be a kid's choice. I think it's fantastically put together, but that's just something to think about. Next book, The Many Assassinations of Samir, the Seller of Dreams. This is a fresh and unique historical fiction novel about life along the Silk Road, Middle Ages. We don't know the exact time because this is not a straightforward historical fiction novel. It's almost a ridiculous perspective and story. The narrator is unreliable, and the stories are a little bit extreme and over the top as he tells the story of how he came to meet Samir, who is the person he's attached to on the Silk Road. The narrator is named Monkey, although before he came to meet Samir, he was named Omar. And the first chapter, we meet Omar. It was called, he started it by saying something like, the first time I was killed, I was stoned to death. Yeah, the first time I was stoned to death was blah, blah, blah. And then the chapter ends with telling about Omar or Samir and why he didn't like him. And he says, and that's why I killed him. So you already hear these kind of flippant ways of saying I was stoned to death. Oh, and I killed him. So you kind of think, wait, what's going on? Is this really a kid telling this story? So right from the beginning, you know, there's something not quite accurate about what's going on. But it's so funny throughout the book because Samir is so dishonest. Apparently various people from along the Silk Road are trying to assassinate him. And Omar, or Monkey, I should call him Monkey because that's what he's called in the book. Monkey keeps saving the day, jumping in at the last minute and getting him out of there because he's wanting to get his freedom back. He was bought for 6 bolts of silk. Anyway, Monkey keeps saving his life. But will he be able to get his freedom from Samir before he is also targeted? So it is so funny, and it's on the Silk Road. I've always looked for a book about the Middle Ages and on the Silk Road, just to give a little feel for the atmosphere. I have my game that I sell at Line Upon Line Learning all about the Marco Polo Silk Road. So I've always looked for a book like this, and this one has it. And there's a book that can kind of give a little bit life to why it was dangerous along that area. All these different groups are trying to assassinate Samir. You know, I read the whole book now and I think, really? Were there really all these people trying to assassinate him? Wait, what kind of a person was this really? Where did Monkey really come from? I mean, there are all these questions at the end. It's really delightful, though. It has the same kind of feel that the Inquisitors? I forgot the name of the book by Adam Gidwitz, The Inquisitor's Tale, which is also about the Middle Ages, but it also had this fantastic aspect to the storytelling. The Many Assassinations of Samir is a much shorter book than some of the others on the Newbery list. It's bigger than in format than a middle grade novel, so it kind of is a little more wider than that. It has a different kind of feel in the hands. It feels more like this fairy tale-like story. So definitely A+ on the format there. I think they got that right. Each chapter has a beautifully colored illustration. It all just fits the mood and the tone of the book altogether, and I really like this one. Will it win the Newbery? I don't know. You'd have to have that same kind of appreciation for that kind of ridiculous storytelling tone. Let's see, what other books haven't I mentioned that were on School Library Journal's list? The Mona Lisa Vanishes. Okay, so this one is absolutely fantastic. It's nonfiction middle grade story with alternating chapters telling about when the Mona Lisa was stolen in 1911 and what the Mona Lisa was, how it was created, who was Mona Lisa when it was painted, all these different things, but it captures the attention of the young reader so well. The tone is friendly, it's humorous, like sly side remarks. This is how history should be written for kids. This has to win something tomorrow, whether it's the Newbery Award or whether it is the Cybert for nonfiction. We learn so much about Da Vinci's process, but we also learn about where it went all along the years and why this little tiny picture, it's really small, became one of the most famous pieces of art. It wasn't really known before it was stolen in 1911. So many things I didn't know that I learned from this book. And I've even been in seeing the Mona Lisa, and I was like, what's the big deal about this? The big deal is it was stolen in 1911, and they used a lot of new forensic techniques to try to figure out who did it. So lots of great things in here to learn, but also just to enjoy. So definitely one to pick up, and I can't wait to see what it gets tomorrow. Simon Sort of Says is a book that I read right at the beginning part of the year when I first started hearing about it. I reviewed it in May. And it made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me sigh when I finished it. It is a book about a kid that's overcoming trauma. Simon was the only survivor in his classroom in a school shooting a couple years before the story begins. And so he has this trauma, but he doesn't want anyone to know it. And their family has recently moved to Grin and Barrett, Nebraska. It's a fictional place, but in this book, it is a place that is a town in radio silence. There's no internet, microwaves, cell phones, all these things, because there are scientists trying to listen for messages from space. There is a real place like that in the United States, but it's not in Nebraska. But it still sounds like a fantastical world, but how could it really exist? He wants to keep under the radar, but the girl he meets there has a larger-than-life personality. She has no shame in saying, yeah, I have autism. Let me tell you about myself. And so she knows his secret, and so all these different things come out. And he learns that he can do what he wants. He doesn't have to sort of agree to things. He can be on his own plane, make his own decisions. And as you have to when you go through a tragedy, Simon uses humor. And the book uses tons of humor to make everything lighthearted. I mean, it's a story about a school shooting survivor, and yet it's full of funny things. Think escaping emus, towers listening for messages from space, and his mom works in a funeral home. Yeah, there are dead bodies downstairs. So you put all that together, and you get this hilarious book that just, I think, puts it all together really well. So he's dealing with PTSD, we're dealing with this concept of school shooting, and yet the book is funny. And it's rereadable. And I haven't read it since last year, but it's still one that I think of. And it's really unfortunate we live in a world where kids probably need this kind of book. But, you know, they go through the drills at school. And so it's probably good that they are also going through, they could read a book like this about somebody who's overcome it. There's one scene in it in particular where he has he has PTSD, of course, and he has a reaction when nobody else does. And that's when one of the ways, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm spoiling it, but one of the ways all of his secret comes out. And I think it helps people have empathy for other people when they can see that, you know, when they can consider what really happens to other people when they go through tragedy. So although Simon sort of says is about a boy overcoming tragedy, it does such a fantastic job at putting it all together. I do hope this one wins something tomorrow. It's one of my favorites. And then the last one to talk about, I actually just read today because I wanted to have one more to talk about tomorrow. This is a book that won the School Library Journal Mock Newbery Committee. I watched their video going through their discussions about the different books. It's called The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. And this incorporates a boy, 2020, dealing with the early days of COVID in spring of 2020. He's stuck. He has to take care of his 100-year-old great-grandmother. And nothing could be worse than that. He can't have his switch back until he helps her go through all of her boxes. But as he does so, he comes to learn about the secrets of her life and how relevant the past can be when you consider the present. And so it has perspectives from his year in 2020, and then also from three girls during 1932 from Ukraine to Brooklyn. And it turns out these are three cousins, and Matthew finds a way that he can get Gigi to tell her story so that he knows what happened. Both of his parents are journalists of some kind. We don't quite find out, but he gets tips from them on how to get information for an interview, and he is able to essentially record her story for her. So the whole book as a whole is talking about the Holodomor. I don't know if I said that right, but it's the human-made famine in Russia in the 1930s. Millions of Ukrainians died because the Russian Communist Party was trying to get those Ukrainians to be more submissive to the Russian leadership. That's how we explain it now. In our book, we have the three girls. Helen is the daughter of a Ukrainian immigrant, and she wants to be American, and so she's trying as hard as she can to be American. And then we have Mila, who is the daughter of a Communist Party leader in Kiev, and she, from the beginning, she's spouting facts from the Communist Party, and to a reader today, we can be like, oh, really? Is that really how it is? About Papa Stalin and all that. And then the third is a girl, Nadia, who is in poverty on one of the farms in the countryside, starving to death, her family starving to death because they have no food. The Russian government has taken it from their community, and they have nothing left over, even after they farm the land. the young characters are well developed. They're all unique. Helen learns that she has a cousin that's starving to death in Ukraine, but the newspapers are saying there is no famine, and she's anchored by the propaganda coming from this writer in the newspaper, and the New York Times doesn't want to hear from her, even though she has all these secondhand accounts from families in America saying my family in Ukraine is starving to death. And then we have Mila, who meets Nadia, who's starving to death, and Mila has to start questioning what is really happening. Are all these things I've been told my whole life a lie? So Helen, Mila, and then Matthew in the 2020 era, they all seemed young and innocent, and their innocence is being kind of wiped away as they learn these things. Nadia doesn't seem innocent because she isn't. She's gone through all of these things in the countryside when she makes it to Kiev. And there's so much in here. And I know that middle graders can probably relate to the COVID thing, even if they were too young when COVID began in 2020. At this point, they can still remember, okay, online school still stinks, and being isolated for one reason or another is always going to be difficult. I love that there's this subtle undertone about propaganda. Both Mila's been influenced by propaganda, and Helen in New York City has been influenced by propaganda. And there's this subtle commentary about COVID-19 propaganda as well, but it's not dwelt upon. But I do think that all of it together makes for this telling message as an adult that I see. And I love how there's emphasis on truth and story and telling your story and making sure that you're heard. So the book avoided 2020 politics, but it did make this fantastic points about propaganda, finding reliable sources, and then making sure your story is told. And Matthew, because he was able to have this time home with his great-grandma, was able to help her at 100 years old get her true story told. And it's still important that we find true stories today. I think all of the books that are up for the running, of course, these aren't all of them. There are so many more that are up for the running for the Newbery, and the committee can decide on anything. It doesn't matter what the mock committee say. All these stories are being told, and I'm glad for that, and I can't wait to see what they say tomorrow, January 22nd. It's also my birthday, so I hope that one of these books that I've read has made it, so I can say, yay, I've read one, and maybe I'll make another video tomorrow. Bye.